you first. When you take a look at both of these QBs, who had the most impressive start so far in the preseason?
Well, to me, it was Shedeur. I didn't see any interceptions when he was out there. Didn't see anything like that. I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't think Dillon Gabriel did a bad job. I was impressed with the brother, but I'm going to go with Shedeur. You know, the pressure was on him. The spotlight was on him.
Stephen A. Smith didn't just call out Dillon Gabriel. He held him accountable and made him rethink his comments. The moment Dillon Gabriel spoke and went after Shedeur Sanders, it wasn't a minor slip. He crossed the line and stepped directly into Stephen A. Smith's wheelhouse. And Smith answered with a clear, direct response that left no room for misinterpretation.
The comparisons were emanating from the media more so than anybody else. And that's what I think, that's exactly who I think he was directing his comments towards. Having said that, Dillon Gabriel, respectfully, it was stupid. A very dumb comment to make. First of all, let me tell you something right now. In every walk of life, far beyond the parameters of a football field.
This wasn't casual sports commentary, it was a decisive critique. Dillon Gabriel's comments were taken apart by Stephen A. Smith with clear, direct points. Gabriel, a quarterback with solid stats but limited top-level achievements, chose to take a public shot at Shedeur Sanders. Shedeur, who has handled sustained media scrutiny and on-field expectations, became the target of an unnecessary criticism. Smith responded by challenging Gabriel's standing to make that claim, and by defending Sanders on the facts. The outcome was clear. Gabriel overreached, and Sanders didn't deserve the hit.
Dan Orlovsky would sit up here in comparison to Shedeur Sanders, who did no such thing, and say, hey, thought he looked better. I got to give him the edge here. I thought it wasn't bad. A pick six and a fumble, and we can get over fumbles. Have you heard anybody say that? I know it's possible. Have you ever heard anybody say, we get over?
Stephen A. Smith responded immediately. As soon as Dillon Gabriel made his comments about Shedeur Sanders, Smith delivered a clear, point-by-point critique that drew national attention across the NCAA media cycle. Dillon Gabriel has a reputation as a good quarterback, not a dominant one. He can post strong numbers against opponents like Tulsa, but his performance has been inconsistent when the stakes and competition rise to playoff level.
Well, those who produce get treated differently than those who don't. What he said echoes the mentality of all of America practically, and most certainly the world, as we see things being globalized more and more every day. It was a stupid, idiotic, immature comment, because clearly you were feeling the heat because a lot of people was talking about how Shedeur should be QB.
Dillon Gabriel is a capable quarterback, but not a standout. Even so, he chose to talk down to Shedeur Sanders, a quarterback who has navigated constant scrutiny and pressure and still represents the future of a program that was struggling before he arrived. The comparison was weak. The criticism was unnecessary. Stephen A. Smith recognized that and dismantled Gabriel's argument with a clear, direct response.
How the Browns react to this, how the locker room reacts to this, how Shedeur reacts to this, because it was a clear shot at Shedeur. But let's say Dillon Gabriel's talking about the media. How could you be a brand new quarterback in the NFL and the first time you get behind a mic after your first game, you throw the media under the bus? That's arrogance.
Stephen A. Smith excels in moments like this. When Dillon Gabriel made his remarks about Shedeur Sanders, Smith responded with a focused, direct critique. He questioned Gabriel's standing to make that claim, noting that Gabriel has transferred between programs and has not been a Heisman finalist. Without theatrics, Smith laid out why Gabriel's resume doesn't justify taking public shots at Sanders. Smith's point was clear. Targeting Shedeur Sanders, a quarterback central to his program's future and consistently under intense scrutiny, was misplaced. Gabriel's criticism lacked the substance to support it, and Smith methodically showed why.
Content today on his 42nd I want you to be meaner. Birthday. That's number one. Number two, after the game, the Browns head coach Kevin Stefanski said there was a mix-up in the routes and that players were in the area that they shouldn't have been.
Look at Stephen A's face. Look at Stephen A's face. Look at
Stephen A.
Oh my Lord.
The strength of Stephen A. Smith's response was that he didn't just address Gabriel's remarks. He challenged the image around him. Dillon Gabriel often presents himself as an overlooked contender ready to surprise. But the reality is that his profile hasn't commanded broad attention. It's a clear reminder that not every opinion carries equal weight. In defending Shedeur Sanders, Stephen A. was direct and precise. Shedeur isn't just a quarterback. He is Deion Sanders' son, which subjects him to scrutiny far beyond anything Gabriel has faced. Even under that pressure, Shedeur has maintained his composure, shown confidence, and delivered in key moments that helped revive a program many had written off.
Stupidity, all of it. I thought it was a clear shot at Shedeur due to the fact that his Oregon coach threw a shot at Coach Prime and Shedeur during their meeting at Colorado last year. But you know what? The cream rises to the top. Let's see what happens this week. I see a lot of the media talking about they think it was about the media and not about Shedeur. And I think that's a chess move.
For Dillon Gabriel to take shots at Shedeur Sanders was a miscalculation. Stephen A. Smith made the mismatch clear. Gabriel's attempt to shame Sanders was unnecessary and counterproductive. You don't target Deion Sanders' son when Deion has turned Colorado into primetime television. It underscored that Dillon Gabriel has often played with a chip on his shoulder because the spotlight hasn't followed him. He has been around long enough to compile numbers but not to earn broad respect. That's why going after Shedeur was misguided. Sanders, despite ups and downs, drives headlines. Gabriel's most notable headlines have been his transfers. Stephen A. Smith pressed that point without hesitation, challenging Gabriel's standing and leaving his argument looking like a forced throw that turns into a pick six.
You know what? Still needs to thank me a little bit more for that restaurant I treated him and his family to, because it was big time, and stop embarrassing me by going places and trying to use coupons. That's how pathetic he is. The point is that a pick six and a fumble is usually considered a bad day.
Stephen A. Smith didn't need to raise his voice to make the point. He presented Dillon Gabriel as a player whose talk outpaces his resume and defended Shedeur Sanders with clear comparisons. That's why he called Gabriel out so directly. The comparison wasn't just unfair, it was forced. Now look at Gabriel's record. The numbers are solid and he can win against average defenses, but the resume lacks defining markers. There's no sustained Heisman contention, no late season surge that reshaped the national picture, and no postseason moment that cements a legacy. The track record reflects steady production, not top-tier impact. That's the gap Smith underscored. Gabriel's criticism of Shedeur Sanders wasn't supported by what he has accomplished, while Sanders continues to carry a program under constant scrutiny.
Let's see some of them step up and make some plays out there.
Ain't no way.
Gabriel
Ain't no way. He's not built like that. No way.
And this one is picked off and going back the other way.
Oh my God, why did he stop playing?
Now it's a foot race. And that is that.
They told me bust out my AP, perfect timing. H-shot, we about to get legendary. Shedeur start the next game, baby. Shout out Dillon though, you know what I'm saying? Bro, I love you, my heart. What am I bigger than cheese, bro? You know what I'm saying? But Shedeur got it.
Shedeur Sanders is a national brand who draws viewers for both performance and result. Dillon Gabriel's attempt to diminish him read as resentment. And Stephen A. Smith called out the insecurity and lack of awareness directly. Colorado under Deion Sanders is prime time, and Shedeur sits at the center of that spotlight. If Gabriel expected the sports world to agree while he took a shot at Shedeur, he misread the moment. Smith dismantled the argument and questioned the credibility behind it. Gabriel will move on. He'll keep playing, give interviews, and have fans, but this exchange will trail his media profile as a reminder of a misstep. It's a clear example of a resume that doesn't justify taking public aim at a quarterback carrying that level of scrutiny and responsibility.
For the Cleveland Browns preseason game today is that the way that some white folks watched Shedeur Sanders last week is the way that some black folks were watching Dillon Gabriel today. And it's not Dillon Gabriel for Dillon Gabriel's sake. Most folks don't have a problem with Dillon Gabriel. It's what he represents, which is the disrespect of a black person for no other apparent reason than they are a confident black person.
Dillon Gabriel thought he was aiming up. Instead, he was placed back among quarterbacks who are good but not great. Stephen A. Smith made the central point. Dillon Gabriel doesn't shape the conversation. Sports are about narrative as much as numbers, and Gabriel's story doesn't move the culture, while Shedeur Sanders does. Smith highlighted that contrast clearly. By the end, Gabriel's credibility had taken a measurable hit. The critique was decisive and sent a broader message to any player considering public shots at Shedeur Sanders. If you step into that debate, you will be held to a higher standard and your resume will be tested. Dillon Gabriel learned that the hard way.
Shedeur is lighting it up in practice every day, you're not even a half bit curious to see what he could do with the ones? That makes no sense. And then on top of all of that, you got players going on podcasts and talking to people in the media saying this guy is really good. Like, this guy is legit. So even your peers respect you enough. How is it that the coaches can't see that? It always starts with the players, where the players like, hey, you see that? You seen that pass he threw?
The Cleveland Browns were taken by surprise when quarterback Shedeur Sanders stepped in for first-team snaps, asserting control of the drill and instantly highlighting deficiencies across the rest of the room. His confident command forced coaches to pause practice clips, reevaluate progressions, and consider immediate adjustments to the depth chart. Within minutes, discussions spread throughout the facility and online forums as fans weighed what Sanders' showing means for the current starters. The organization now faces an urgent, data-driven decision on whether Sanders should move up permanently. Shedeur Sanders arrived at Browns practice, took several first-team reps, and the entire quarterback group immediately felt the pressure. Coaches erased the whiteboard and reviewed their plans. Staff members exchanged concerned comments, and observers began asking whether Sanders was positioned to assume a larger role.
Tony, every year we see at least 1 to 2 teams. They were in last place in their division the year before. No one thought they'd be good, and then they were good. It almost seems like no one's even assuming the Browns can be that, but we see it happen every year. And I get the quarterback stuff, but like, correct me if I'm wrong, Tony. The Browns are trying to run the football, play good defense, not turn the ball over in the passing game, and try and take advantage when they can, correct? That's what they're trying to do.
That was the 2020 offense.
The Cleveland Browns are still searching for stability at quarterback. Deshaun Watson is yet to deliver consistent starter-level production that justifies his contract, and each game renews doubts about whether he can regain peak form. Behind him, rookie Dorian Thompson-Robinson shows promise but remains inexperienced and unpolished. Coaches are evaluating alternatives each week and may need to adjust the depth chart if progress stalls. The roster around them is built to contend now, so ongoing uncertainty under center is increasingly costly.
As we talk about, we do believe in best player available. We do believe in positional value, and we didn't necessarily expect him to be available in the in the 5th round, and so we love adding competition to every position room and adding him to compete with the guys that are already in there. We felt like that was the appropriate thing to do.
The Browns quarterback group is unsettled. Deshaun Watson has yet to provide the reliable, high-level play his contract demands, while rookie Dorian Thompson-Robinson remains promising but unpolished. Depth behind them consists mostly of veterans whose experience lies more in holding clipboards than leading offenses. The coaching staff needs an immediate answer, not a 3-year development project. Shedeur Sanders enters as that potential solution. At Colorado, he passed for more than 3,200 yards despite working behind one of college football's poorest offensive lines, consistently demonstrating poise, quick processing, and accurate ball placement under heavy pressure. Film shows steady reads and disciplined footwork, traits that offset concerns that his profile is built on family name or media attention. Cleveland viewed the signing as a low-risk, high-reward move. Early in camp, Sanders received a handful of first-team snaps intended merely as an evaluation. Those plays quickly changed practice tempo. The ball came out on time, receivers hit their landmarks, and the defense struggled to adjust. Coaches immediately expanded the review using phrases such as evaluate every option, an indication that the depth chart was no longer fixed. Watson sensed the scrutiny. Thompson-Robinson increased his urgency. Within minutes, competition in the quarterback room intensified. Sanders repeated that performance in subsequent sessions. His footwork remained clean, progression sharp, and throws firm and precise. Each strong rep forced staff to reassess the plan to keep him buried on the developmental track. The broader context magnifies the pressure. Cleveland's roster is built to contend now. Fans are weary of quarterback turnover, and the front office cannot afford another costly misstep under center. Around the league, rookie passers rarely wait multiple seasons anymore. Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, CJ Stroud, and even late pick Brock Purdy established that precedent. If Watson opens the regular season and struggles, public calls for Sanders will grow, especially if the rookie flashes in preseason. Alternatively, another team could attempt to acquire him if Cleveland hesitates to elevate his role. Each scenario underscores the same reality. Sanders' emergence has turned a routine camp evaluation into a critical decision point for the franchise.
And we saw Dillon Gabriel go 11-11 with the first team, Shedeur Sanders go 11-11 with the second unit. So that was really the big wrinkle today.
Yes, and of course, it was the first time that we have seen Shedeur Sanders get any of those coveted 11 on 11 reps. Of course, again, it wasn't with the first team offense or against the first team defense, but it's progress. And that means that he's going in the right direction, that the arrow is pointing up. He's coming up the learning curve. So that's good for him. And I actually thought just overall, he had a better day than Dillon had today. He completed more passes. He was more on point. In fact, in that 11 on 11 period, he threw a near touchdown.
Desperation can push franchises toward aggressive decisions, especially when their quarterback options appear unconvincing or outdated. One scenario now emerging is that Sanders earns enough confidence to take full preseason reps with the starters, forcing Cleveland to revisit a depth chart it believed was settled at the beginning of July. His practices demonstrate that the excitement around him is grounded in measurable performance. Accurate, high-velocity passes against first-team defenses, and confident command of the huddle. Each strong outing also heightens league-wide interest. Rival scouts adjust evaluations, and general managers revisit their notes, aware that a viable young quarterback may soon become available. Inside the facility, the personnel staff must balance short-term results with long-term roster planning, knowing that an early move could reshape salary cap allocations and locker room dynamics. The pressure on Watson and Thompson-Robinson escalates accordingly. Both must produce visible progress to maintain their current roles. Cleveland's recent history shows how quickly promising quarterback situations can devolve into controversy. The franchise has turned potential breakthroughs into organizational turmoil before, so observers remain cautious about how this competition will unfold. They have never loathed college football itself. They have resisted the people determined to reshape it. When Deion Sanders, black, direct, unapologetic, walks into a room of power brokers and speaks with authority instead of deference, critics recoil. During his playing days, they complained about celebrations and gold chains. Now that he is a head coach, mentor, and father, they label him something more polite, but just as dismissive, a problem. At Big 12 Media Days, Sanders addressed the accelerating chaos of the name, image, likeness market. He said college football needs a salary cap, not to hobble players, but to impose order on a system that showers unproven freshmen with seven-figure promises while the rest of a roster hunts for scraps. He called the situation unsustainable. Within hours, ESPN commentator Paul Feinbaum branded him a hypocrite, arguing that Sanders profited from NIL at Jackson State and now wants rules only because his most marketable athletes have moved on. The accusation spread quickly because it fit a comfortable storyline. Outspoken black coach gains from change, then protests when the advantage disappears. That framing ignores context. Sanders never criticized players earning money. At Jackson State, he urged corporate sponsors to partner with athletes who had been invisible to major brands for decades. What he wants now is stability, standardized guidelines, basic financial literacy, and roster balance that prevents locker rooms from fracturing over uneven payouts. When other coaches, Nick Saban, Dabo Swinney, Lane Kiffin, voiced similar concerns, they were praised for foresight. When Sanders spoke, the tone shifted to suspicion. The difference is not the message, it is the messenger. Feinbaum's response followed a familiar script. When black leaders question the structure of the sport, their motives are interrogated, their credibility attacked, and their competence doubted. He did not level the same charge at Jimbo Fisher when Fisher complained that NIL disturbed recruiting. He stayed silent when Kiffin lamented the transfer portal. But Sanders, who raised enrollment and television ratings at Jackson State, brought unprecedented attention to Colorado in one season and consistently mentors players beyond football, was called opportunistic. Feinbaum dismissed the cultural impact Sanders created, the exposure for historically black colleges, the draft picks developed, the infrastructure improved, reducing his work to a marketing stunt dependent on star sons, Shedeur and Shiloh, or two-way standout Travis Hunter. Sanders did not retaliate. He returned to practice, media obligations, and recruiting. His confidence is rooted in faith and in the responsibility he feels toward young athletes whose lives will extend decades beyond their highlight clips. When he asks for NIL boundaries, he is thinking about freshmen handed large sums without guidance, families unprepared for sudden wealth, and programs that abandon kids once production stalls. He has watched that cycle from the inside. He wants protections, not restrictions. Critics predicted Colorado would fade once Shedeur and Hunter leave. Instead, Sanders signed blue-chip quarterback G.J. Lewis and a wave of transfers eager to join a program that values personal growth as much as on-field wins. Recruits see a coach who challenges the status quo, who places black culture at the program's center without apology, and who will remain visible when social media buzz cools. They recognize that Sanders does not chase attention, attention follows his results. Media outlets reduced the upcoming Buffalo season to a win total prop. 6 victories, give or take. Sanders is playing a longer game. He wants to show young athletes, especially black athletes, that they can lead authentically, speak with conviction, and refuse to shrink for access. Success measured only by the scoreboard misses the point. If Sanders builds men who graduate with financial literacy, self-confidence, and community awareness, he will consider the mission successful, even if Colorado finishes with 5 wins instead of 10. None of that registers with commentators invested in an older hierarchy. For them, leadership should remain predictable, reserved posture, muted tone, minimal cultural expression. Sanders contradicts that image. The possibility that his methods could spread to other coaches, to other programs, threatens a model that has kept decision-making and revenue streams concentrated for generations. So the debate is not about hypocrisy or payroll ceilings. It is about control of the narrative and who is deemed qualified to write it. Sanders refuses to surrender that authority. He knows order is necessary. He also knows whose voices have been ignored whenever real reform is discussed. By speaking plainly, he forces television panels, athletic directors, and conference commissioners to confront issues they would rather defer: financial education, equitable resource distribution, and consistent national standards. Whether Colorado exceeds betting lines this fall will not change the trajectory Sanders has already set. He made Boulder relevant, energized recruiting beyond traditional power corridors, and broadened college football's cultural reach. That influence will persist long after social media debates cool. If his call for NIL structure eventually becomes policy, as the NCAA and Congress now contemplate, Feinbaum's soundbite will fade while Sanders' imprint endures. In the end, accusations of hypocrisy say more about the accuser than the coach. Sanders has remained consistent: empower athletes, hold adults accountable, and inject stability before unchecked money corrodes the locker room. The people who stand to lose clout in that environment prefer the chaos they can manipulate. Sanders prefers a system that nurtures the players who make the sport worth watching. His advocacy is rooted in experience, not self-interest, and his critics will have to decide whether to engage with that reality or keep shouting from the sidelines. Chris Carter's televised assessment of Shedeur Sanders triggered immediate pushback from Cleveland fans, local media, and even several Browns veterans. Carter dismissed Sanders, a 5th-round pick, as unprepared to start and framed the growing interest around him as purely a byproduct of surname recognition. Since that segment aired, practice reports have told a very different story. Observers inside the Browns facility describe a rookie quarterback who is closing the gap on Kenny Pickett and Dillon Gabriel with surprising speed. Sanders first turned heads in rookie minicamp by directing the huddle with a calm that belied his inexperience. Position coaches reported that he rarely repeated mental errors during installation periods, a trait they rank highly when grading young quarterbacks. In organized team activities, he showed consistent timing on intermediate routes, kept turnover numbers low in 7-on-7 periods, and demonstrated early command of Kevin Stefanski's protection calls. That steady execution earned him a handful of first-team snaps, reps that would ordinarily have belonged to Pickett by default. By mandatory minicamp, the rotation had shifted again. Practice notes from beat reporters detail the rise in Sanders' workload each day. Red zone series against the starting defense, 2-minute drills, and full field scrimmage possessions in which he checked out of called plays when fronts dictated it. Mary Kay Cabot, initially skeptical Sanders would challenge for game day snaps in 2025, wrote after consecutive sessions in mid-June that his footwork, release speed, and pocket management had, quote, meaningfully tightened since rookie camp. Her tone marked a clear departure from early spring projections that labeled Sanders a long-term developmental project. The broader quarterback context in Cleveland magnifies that progress. Deshaun Watson's availability and form remain uncertain after 2 injury-interrupted seasons, while Pickett's transition from Pittsburgh has been uneven. Dillon Gabriel's arm strength is evident, but coaches continue to stress hesitation in his full-field reads. Against that backdrop, Sanders' quick decision-making and mechanical efficiency have begun to look less like a pleasant surprise and more like the roster's most reliable short-term plan. Inside the locker room, acceptance has followed performance. Wide receivers cite Sanders' ball placement on outbreaking routes, noting that the ball routinely arrives on the upfield shoulder, a small but essential detail that allows for yards after the catch. Offensive linemen appreciate his pocket awareness. Joel Bitonio remarked privately that Sanders slides up instead of bailing when edge pressure flashes. Defensive backs say his eye discipline forces them to hold coverage longer than they expected against a rookie. Such cross-positional respect develops only when day-to-day tape shows tangible improvement. The reaction to Carter's critique highlights a recurring double standard applied to young black quarterbacks. Traits celebrated as swagger or confidence in other players were labeled arrogance when associated with Sanders, yet the quarterback himself has not responded publicly. There have been no subtle social media jabs, no mention of critics in interviews, only repeated references to competing for every rep and learning from veterans. That measured approach, combined with hard evidence from practice, has softened earlier doubts among coaches who prioritize demeanor as much as arm talent. Within the coaching staff, the discussion now centers on readiness thresholds. Stefanski's scheme relies heavily on quick rhythm throws, defined reads, and disciplined pocket movement. Those requirements align with Sanders' strengths: a compact release, willingness to target the middle of the field, and instinctive timing on RPO concepts carried over from his college tape. Staffers reviewing cut-ups from joint practices note that his internal clock already approximates NFL speed, a metric they did not expect to see until mid-season at best. If that trajectory continues through preseason games, the Browns face a consequential decision. Starting a fifth-round rookie 6 weeks after training camp opens would unsettle salary cap assumptions, depth chart politics, and external perceptions of organizational stability. Yet the internal mandate remains clear: the most prepared quarterback will play. That standard places Sanders in genuine contention because every practice metric used to grade readiness, turnover ratio, red zone efficiency, third down conversion rate, has trended in his favor since early June. The organizational stakes are considerable. Cleveland has cycled through starting quarterbacks at a startling pace over the past decade, shifting from first-round investments like Baker Mayfield to high-cost gambles such as Watson, each move packaged as the long-awaited solution. A rookie chosen outside the first 100 picks ascending to the top of the depth chart would challenge long-held league assumptions about draft pedigree and opportunity. It would also validate the evaluation philosophy that prioritized Sanders' intangibles: processing speed, leadership presence, over conventional arm strength thresholds that pushed him down the draft board. Carter's televised remarks now sit awkwardly alongside daily updates from Berea. His critique relied on pre-draft labels and the presumption that a late-round passer with a famous father would need a redshirt year. Practice film contradicts that stance. Sanders checks protections at the line, manipulates safeties with shoulder fakes, and has reduced turnover-worthy throws in full-speed sessions to single digits. Statistics normally cited for veteran backups, not rookies. The longer that evidence accumulates, the more Carter's comments appear rooted in legacy bias rather than objective performance review. None of this guarantees Sanders will open the season under center. Preseason defenses test quarterbacks in ways practice cannot. Defensive coordinators will disguise pressure and boundary rotation to force late decisions. Sanders must show he can adjust protections and exploit mismatches without the benefit of a controlled environment. Yet within the Browns facility, the conversation has shifted from if he will be ready to when. Quiet confidence from Amari Cooper and other veterans suggests they believe Sanders can steady an offense searching for consistency more than highlight reel heroics. Sanders' rise also affects long-term roster calculus. If he earns the job and performs competently, Cleveland gains starter-level production on a cost-controlled rookie contract, freeing cap space allocated to other positions. That scenario could reshape roster-building strategy in a division featuring Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson, quarterbacks whose contracts consume significant percentages of team payroll. A capable, low-cost starter would allow the Browns to reinforce their offensive line and secondary while retaining core veterans, a competitive advantage few teams enjoy. For now, the focal point remains daily improvement. Sanders continues to arrive before sunrise, reviewing the previous day's install with the quarterback coach, then staying after practice to throw on-air routes with receivers low on the depth chart. Coaches track those habits closely because consistent routine underpins performance when adversity strikes in live games. Each incremental gain strengthens the argument that readiness depends on preparation and aptitude, not draft slot. Carter's segment reminded the league how quickly assessments can become outdated when they lean on perception over evidence. Sanders' steady climb up the depth chart underscores the counterpoint. In the NFL, tape is the final arbiter. Should Sanders translate practice efficiency to preseason success, the Browns may discover that the solution to their long-standing quarterback riddle arrived quietly in the 5th round, carrying little more than confidence and a willingness to work. While much of the NFL community attended the ESPYs in Los Angeles, Shedeur Sanders spent the day in Cleveland with families recovering from a residential explosion. He did not seek cameras or a red carpet appearance. He chose to be present in a neighborhood working through loss. Weeks earlier, an explosion at the Rainbow Terrace apartments in the Garden Valley neighborhood displaced more than 100 residents. Local officials reported that 42 families were left without housing. A father suffered burns over most of his body and remained in a coma. His 2 young children were hospitalized in critical condition. The damage extended beyond structures. Families lost possessions, stability, and routine. Cleveland City Council member Richard A. Starr described the moment as a family fighting for its future. Outside of local reporting, national attention was limited. Sanders decided to go to the site, meet residents, and help organize a day focused on relief and connection. The decision drew questions almost immediately. Some asked why he was not at the ESPYs, others questioned his motives. Sanders did not respond with counter-arguments. He explained simply that he felt an obligation to be present and that he would act on that conviction. This was not a team-scheduled appearance. He promoted the gathering himself, arrived without ceremony, and spent the day with residents. His approach emphasized listening, participation, and time. The event, which he called the Garden Valley Fun Fest, brought a large turnout over several hours. The purpose was straightforward: create space for families to reconnect and for children to play, even as recovery work continued. Sanders threw passes with kids on the blacktop, joined in games, and spoke with parents and grandparents about what they were facing next. He moved through the apartment complex and common areas with minimal staff support. Browns defensive lineman Michael Hall Jr. attended and interacted with residents as well. There were no speeches or staged moments. The focus remained on residents and their needs. Questions about visibility persisted as photos and short clips circulated online. Some criticism framed the visit as a substitute for a higher profile appearance in Los Angeles. Sanders kept to the same message. The priority was to support a neighborhood coping with displacement and uncertainty. He did not present the choice as a protest of any event. He presented it as the correct use of his day. When local media asked about his intent, Sanders said his goal was to provide families with a day of enjoyment and a reminder of community. He added that financial support can help, but that showing up in person also matters. Standing with people, listening to them directly, and offering time. The statement matched the structure of the day. He stayed on site, remained accessible, and left the focus on residents rather than on himself. The timeline mattered to him as training camp approached. Sanders did not connect the visit to his role on the depth chart or his draft position. He kept references to football confined to preparation, learning the playbook, protections, cadence, and timing, seeking guidance from veterans, including Joe Flacco, and staying ready for opportunities when they come. He has repeated that he has time to grow and intends to use it to learn the system and earn trust. The visit did not alter those priorities. He returned to his regular schedule the next day. Since arriving in Cleveland, Sanders has treated community work as part of his responsibilities. Before his jersey went on sale, he visited schools, including John Marshall High School, speaking with students about goals, accountability, and effort. He set public objectives confidently, such as long-term aspirations for the franchise, but paired them with routine work in the building, meetings in stall, film, and on-field reps. The day at Rainbow Terrace fit that pattern. Identify a need, show up, contribute, and avoid unnecessary attention. For residents, the Fun Fest provided a brief reprieve from ongoing challenges: housing transitions, school logistics, medical appointments, and the paperwork that follows an emergency. For teammates and staff who observed, it was an example of a rookie investing time locally without seeking a headline. For Sanders, it reinforced how he plans to operate in Cleveland: be consistent, be present, and let actions speak. The setting at Rainbow Terrace underscored the scale of recovery ahead. Families described the first weeks after the explosion: nights in temporary housing, efforts to replace clothing and essentials, coordination with agencies and community groups. Sanders moved from group to group, speaking with parents about their immediate needs, greeting elders who came to watch the activities, and encouraging kids who wanted to throw a football, run races, or take a photo. He kept the schedule flexible so residents could arrive and leave as they were able. Community partners and volunteers handled tables for supplies, simple games, and refreshments. There were no sponsor banners or organizational pitches. Residents organized as they usually do, checking on neighbors, guiding children, and sharing updates. Sanders' role was clear: participate, make time, and listen. The presence of a recognizable player brought energy, but the purpose remained practical: create a normal afternoon in a place that had not felt normal since the blast. Online reaction covered the full range of opinion. Some posts praised the decision and the event's tone. Others questioned why a rookie would skip a high visibility awards show. Sanders did not try to manage that conversation. He maintained the same explanation. He chose to spend the day where he believed he could be useful, and then he returned to his football schedule. The approach was consistent with how he addresses other topics, answer directly, and move on to the next task. The same measured approach appears in his preparation for camp. Sanders has not asked for public guarantees about reps. He has focused on install recall, cadence, and protection IDs, route timing, and situational work. He has sought input from veterans, thanked teammates who have provided guidance, and spent time with receivers and linemen to align on communication. Coaches have emphasized that the quarterback competition is a process, and Sanders has accepted that framework. His emphasis remains on readiness. None of this overshadows the experience and resumes of other players on the roster. It does provide a clearer picture of how Sanders operates as a professional. He separates off-field actions from promotional efforts. He keeps football preparation focused on what he can control. He communicates with teammates across position groups so that timing and expectations are shared. He does not try to steer attention in his favor. He tries to make steady progress. The day in Garden Valley was one example. He arrived without a speech, stayed for hours, and left without an announcement. He did not ask for recognition. He offered time. Residents responded in kind. Kids lined up for catches and races. Parents and grandparents asked about camp and wished him well, and neighbors coordinated rides and schedules around the event. The atmosphere felt like a neighborhood gathering, not a media production. Local leaders who were present or who spoke later emphasized that recovery will take months. Families will continue to navigate housing, healthcare, and daily logistics. Events like the Fun Fest do not resolve those issues, but they help sustain community connections and morale. Sanders' contribution was to create a space for that to happen and to treat the day with the same seriousness he applies to practice, plan, execute, and keep the focus where it belongs. As the preseason approaches, Sanders will continue to compete for opportunities on the field. He has said he will be prepared when called upon, and that he understands the importance of mastering details before focusing on outcomes. The organization will make decisions based on evaluation, and he will accept the results while continuing to improve. The off-field choices will remain consistent, identify needs in the city where he lives, and contribute in direct, practical ways. The core elements are simple. A neighborhood suffered a significant loss. Residents faced immediate and ongoing challenges. A rookie quarterback chose to spend a day there, without a press conference, without a schedule of talking points, and participate in a community-led event designed to give families a break and remind children that play still has a place. He provided presence, not a headline. He listened more than he spoke. He returned to work the next day. In a league and media environment that often prioritize visibility, Sanders made a different choice. He kept attention on people, not optics. He placed value on time spent in person rather than on appearances. He continued to build trust in the locker room and in the city through steady conduct rather than declarations. That approach, measured, direct, and consistent, will shape how he is viewed in Cleveland as much as any public statement could. The outcome of his football career will be decided on the field by installations learned, reads made, throws delivered, and games played. The outcome of his role in the community will be measured by smaller, quieter moments. Afternoons like the Fun Fest, school visits, and unannounced stops where listening matters more than being seen. For Cleveland residents at Rainbow Terrace, the takeaway from that day was straightforward. Someone who represents their team showed up, stayed, and participated without fanfare. For Sanders, it was the same. Do the work in front of you, whether that is a practice period or a neighborhood event, and keep the focus on the people who are affected most.
So the Shedeur Sanders, I want to talk about this. So here's a prime example. Shedeur Sanders, they had 3-day mini camp for the Cleveland Browns. And now Jimmy Haslam actually has some money. The Bengals owners and the Rooneys are near the bottom of the league in net worth. But what the Browns have is what I would call the Buffalo Bills used to have this years ago, pre-Josh Allen.
What are Browns veterans saying about Shedeur Sanders behind closed doors? According to internal discussions, the feedback goes beyond casual praise. Several veterans describe his performance as franchise level. Private locker room conversations compare his command of the offense to established starters. And one senior assistant reportedly called him Sunday ready after a single walkthrough. The consensus is that front office staff and coaches have taken serious serious notice. Inside the Browns facility, informal conversations circulate among players and coaches. These remarks carry significant weight in personnel evaluations and often influence practice rotations. When veterans speak this strongly, the message typically reaches decision makers quickly, especially during roster planning. In short, the internal perception of Sanders is already affecting how the staff views the current quarterback depth chart.
Browns vets kind of weigh in on Shedeur Sanders and how he's been since he arrived in Cleveland, in Pound Town. And I think it's very, very important that we discuss it, because it'd be really easy for these vets to, this wasn't like a on-the-record interviews. This is just kind of back channels into what the vets are saying, the rumors, but the sources telling us. And we have a couple quotes, but Shedeur Sanders, Cleveland Browns, it seems like it's going well. And it's almost like you don't want to talk about it.
At the center of the growing internal buzz is Shedeur Sanders, the rookie who entered Berea with late-round expectations but is being discussed privately as a potential long-term starter. This is not a routine camp tale about an extra arm taking practice snaps. Sanders has seasoned teammates, players with playoff mileage, quietly reassessing his ceiling. Observers who overlook these conversations risk missing one of Cleveland's most deliberate personnel moves in years. Sanders is not on the roster because of his surname. The Browns reviewed their quarterback depth, weighed costs, and chose a controlled, development-oriented option they believe can stabilize the position. His presence is already changing practice dynamics. Veterans notice his pocket awareness, adjust routes to his timing, and acknowledge that he processes coverage at an advanced level for a first-year player. Leadership patterns in the huddle feel different. Sanders delivers with precision and composure that challenge defenders to reevaluate their calls. The strategic upside is clear. A 4-year rookie contract offers cap flexibility while other franchises cycle through expensive stopgaps. Coaches and front office staff view Sanders as a calculated investment, not a publicity experiment. Outside chatter still focuses on Joe Flacco's age or Kenny Pickett's development. Inside the facility, however, veterans pause film sessions to dissect Sanders' ball placement and progression speed. Position coaches highlight clips where he works through reads decisively and delivers on time, traits rarely attributed to rookies. Sanders' confidence is measured rather than theatrical. He moves as though the NFL tempo is familiar, and that calm spreads across the roster. Experienced defenders are rechecking the depth chart and asking if the quarterback competition is tighter than publicly acknowledged.
Great kid, and whether it's a following that he's earned, I mean, that's something that he's done a great job of interacting with fans, and but he is a great kid. You guys will get to know him more. He's working like crazy, just like all the guys. He's another young man. These rookies, my office is downstairs. As they got to walk by my office as they come in. They come in early. And Shedeur, just like all those guys, he's in there early. He's getting his work done.
He has not yet secured the starting job. Evaluations so far come only from brief practice periods, no comeback drives, no national headlines, just steady execution in shorts and helmets. In a league that celebrates splashy debuts, Shedeur Sanders is earning trust rep by rep. Veterans typically withhold judgment until late in camp, yet several are already studying his footwork and timing, which suggests genuine respect. Inside the building, coaches sense that the Browns may have finally found a stabilizing presence at quarterback. Cleveland's recent history underscores why this matters. The team has started 9 quarterbacks over the past 2 seasons, an indicator of instability rather than depth. Sanders arrives with composure, arm strength, and a well-known surname, so any sign of readiness is magnified. Financial context also plays a role. The Browns are allocating a significant portion of the salary cap to Deshaun Watson, whose performance has not matched that investment. To manage costs, the front office signed 4 additional quarterbacks on low-impact contracts. Together, they account for far less than Watson's annual cap figure. If Sanders continues on his current trajectory, that structure could give Cleveland both competitive clarity and much-needed financial flexibility.
He's the only person who's come out and say, hey, man, this dude look kind of good, man. Let me tell you what I heard. A lot of people reaching out to players in the locker room and stuff. To me, I think this is it's a red herring. Like, I'm supposed to suspend myself to disbelief that he was going to look bad. I've never expected him to look bad to start with. The 5th round quarterback stuff, that's involving perceptions, pre-draft analysis, and other teams
Cleveland's veterans have endured every kind of quarterback turmoil, poor reads, major injuries, shaken confidence, and sideline disputes. When a young quarterback like Shedeur Sanders steps in and appears composed rather than overwhelmed, people notice. The attention comes not just from coaches and reporters, but from the linemen and defensive leaders who have watched previous backups struggle. They are not exchanging doubts, they are sharing nods of approval. Sanders demonstrates instinctive pocket awareness, reliable accuracy, and steady poise, qualities that quickly circulate through team conversations. After years of instability under center, the Browns need someone who can remain calm and effective deep into the season. Although expectations have fallen over time, genuine interest is growing. Praise is coming from teammates who rarely commend anyone unless his performance demands it. They say training camp decides depth charts, but Shedeur Sanders began fighting for his job long before he will step inside the Browns facility. While most first-year players squeezed in one last vacation, he slipped onto a private field in Texas, strapped on Cleveland's helmet and shoulder pads, pulled a fresh number 2 jersey over his chest, and started rifling timing routes as if it were the opening drive of week 1. No cameras, no hype track, no product placement, just sweat, cadence, and ball placement. A rookie does not rehearse in full game gear unless he already envisions himself commanding the huddle. Plenty of observers shrug that clip off. They insist the 5th rounder, quote, isn't ready, cling to depth chart conventions, or whisper that the name across his shoulders did most of the talking on draft day. Maybe it is the Deion connection, maybe it is a preference for prospects who blend quietly into the background, or maybe the league's gatekeepers fear the possibility that the kid is better than the quarterbacks they have spent months promoting. Whatever the motive, the countdown has started, and video rarely lies. Shedeur Sanders is not preparing to arrive. He is preparing to lead. Footage of a 22-year-old quarterback running live reps in July should dominate highlight loops, but it barely registers on national outlets. Why? It ruins the tidy narrative. The easy storyline paints Shedeur as a pampered legacy prospect banking on his father's fame. Yet the tape shows something different. A rookie drenched in afternoon heat, drilling footwork, calling protections, and imagining cover 2 rotation before the first official meeting ever takes place. Elite mental prep looks boring on social feeds. It looks devastating when the season starts. Walk into Cleveland's quarterback room and you step into politics, not simply competition. Joe Flacco, a Super Bowl MVP in decline, carries institutional trust. Kenny Pickett, rescued from Pittsburgh's reset, carries hometown intrigue. Dillon Gabriel, the 3rd-round system fit, carries draft capital the staff must justify. And then there's Shedeur, the lightning rod whose presence alone spotlights every bias in the evaluation process. Coaches frame it neatly. Rookies must wait their turn. The truth is less polite. Practice snaps are currency. Perception is elastic, and early allocations already favor Pickett and Flacco. It is the oldest playbook in the league. Lock vets into the headline roles before pads even crack. Then let repetition shape reality. Sanders refuses to cooperate. He is not a 4th-string camp arm. He has engineered game-winning drives under national scrutiny, operated against live blitz looks most prospects never face, and more than any quarterback in the room, documented his own offseason obsession. No social media rollout, no brand consultant, just pads, cleats, and an unlit practice field. If his last name were Smith, pundits would label him the sleeper of camp. Instead, politics trails every throw. Training camp rotations expose organizational intent. Beat writer Fred Greetham already reports that Pickett and Flacco will open with first-team reps when veterans report July 23rd. Gabriel grabs the developmental snaps, leaving Sanders the leftovers. That isn't performance-based, it's narrative-safe. Gabriel doesn't threaten hierarchy, Sanders bends gravity. Watch the details. Does Shedeur steal 11-on-11 snaps with the 2s? Does he run red zone installs or 2-minute drills? If he does, coaches are admitting he is forcing his way in. If he doesn't, they are postponing the inevitable. Either way, the private field reps have sharpened his timing and condensed his release. He is not hoping for an opportunity, he is prepared to seize one the instant it appears. Cleveland's joint practices amplify that tension. First come live periods against the Panthers, then sessions with the champion Eagles. Those reps belong to the starters, so Flacco and Pickett will absorb most of Carolina's disguised pressure and Philadelphia's exotic fronts. Sanders' proving ground will be the preseason opener on August 8th. Under the stadium lights, he will get entire series, real reads, pockets collapsing for real. If his command mirrors the footage from Texas, coaches will have to answer why he never saw earlier work. Reps are scarce. 10 padded practices separate veteran arrival from game 1. Even an even split, something that never happens, would hardly suffice. Instead, the staff will funnel snaps toward the comfortable choices. That strategy can bury a rookie, but it can also spark an eruption when limited opportunities turn into highlight drives. One flawless touchdown march in the second half of a preseason game, and the dog pound will chant his name. Then the staff's narrative control evaporates. Criticism of Sanders has never matched the scrutiny applied to his peers. Analysts nitpick a ball pat, a foot angle, a pump fake, Pickett's inconsistency, Flacco's diminishing velocity, Gabriel's college system crutches. Discuss politely, if at all. With Shedeur, the critiques arrive as coded doubts. Does he rely on the family brand? Is he coachable? Can he stay humble? That double standard is as old as the league's resistance to outspoken black quarterbacks. Add Deion's unapologetic persona, and each Sanders rep becomes a referendum on establishment comfort levels. Shedeur answers not with rebuttals, but with work. Work captured in silent footage more deafening than any debate show monologue. Quarterback drama masks broader roster cracks. The Browns receiver group is crowded yet unproven. The safety room failed to create turnovers a year ago. Interior defensive linemen are still rehabbing, and the offensive line must retool on the fly. Which quarterback can navigate that turbulence? Flacco's pocket mobility is limited. Pickett's confidence remains fragile. Gabriel is months away from processing NFL disguises. Sanders, forged by perpetual doubt, offers poise under chaos and meticulous preparation, a combination this franchise has lacked since, well, almost forever. Forget politics, depth chart etiquette, and recycled sound bites about developmental timelines. The only metric that counts now is who did the work. Sanders pounding through full gear scripts in late June is not vanity, it's vision. While the league sleeps, he refines his drop steps. While media speculate, he rehearses third down checks. He has already decided what he is. The organization must decide if it can recognize it in time. The preseason will provide the answer. Live bullets, real blitzes, stadium noise. When those throws leave his hand under pressure, no one will discuss ball pats or surnames. They will ask how a quarterback this prepared slipped to round 5. And if the performance matches the preparation, excuses about lack of reps will dissolve. It will be production against perception, and Shedeur Sanders has been producing where no one could see. Ready is the wrong word. He has been ready. Shedeur Sanders doesn't ask for excuses. He hasn't blamed limited reps, patched together receiver groups, or fourth-string offensive linemen struggling against Cleveland's second-team defense. He shows up, works, and demonstrates why he belongs. On day 3 of Browns training camp, for the first time since OTAs, he finally received something close to a fair opportunity. He lined up with the second unit during an 11-on-11 period and made the most of it. In 8 plays, he did what he typically does when given a chance. He executed. He went 2 for 2 on a quick series, finishing with a decisive throw to tight end Blake Whiteheart that immediately caught the sideline's attention. There was no hesitation in his drop, no unsettled feet, and no panic. Just firm, accurate timing and clean operation. It raised an obvious question. What has taken so long for the Browns to evaluate him with a functional group? The story isn't only about one throw, it's about the delay before it. Sanders has been the guy for most of his football life, commanding high school programs, starring in the Southwestern Athletic Conference at Jackson State, then operating under national attention at Colorado. For the first time, he's been told to wait. He has treated that reality as part of the job rather than a setback. He has prepared like a professional since the moment he arrived, and on the 3rd day of camp in heavy heat, he let the football represent his case. While coverage focused on the veteran presence of Kenny Pickett and Joe Flacco, Sanders made an impression with minimal volume. The difference with the second team was immediate. Protection held up, routes were on schedule, and progressions unfolded as designed. Within that structure, he looked like the quarterback who led efficient offenses at Jackson State and Colorado. Calm in the pocket, decisive in his reads, and accurate to tight windows. This was not simply a good practice period, it was a clear statement. He was not just operating the script, he was directing it. The timing was sharp, the reads were clean, and the seam throw to Whiteheart was a high-level anticipation throw, professional in placement and pace. The narrative around Sanders should reflect that when he is placed in a workable situation, his strengths are visible. Early work with 4th unit personnel included protection issues and unreliable spacing. With the 2nd unit, those variables stabilized, and his work looked consistent with his resume. The performance supported a straightforward conclusion. The evaluation should move forward with higher quality reps. Sanders has been explicit about his approach. He does not request special treatment. He intends to be prepared so that when an opportunity appears, he can step in without a drop-off. He has said he wants to be ready for anything and not offer explanations after the fact. That mindset fits what teammates and coaches have observed. A quarterback focused on the assignment, not the conversation around it. The conditions were demanding: relentless sun, heavy humidity, and a practice tempo that stressed decision-making. Many players fatigued as the session wore on. Sanders did not show signs of rushing reads or forcing the ball. He managed the pocket, reset his base when necessary, and continued to deliver on time. The path he has taken, HBCU starter in the SWAC, then Power 5 starter under constant attention, has prepared him for compressed evaluation windows. He has been under scrutiny for years. The heat did not change his process. He moved defenders with his eyes, anticipated breaks, and stepped into throws with balance. The crowd was not chanting his name, and there were no ovations. That was irrelevant to the task. He is focused on the locker room and the staff, and he is building credibility the same way he did at previous stops, by being reliable when the ball is snapped. Quarterbacks coach Bill Musgrave has emphasized ignoring external noise and keeping attention on install, footwork, and timing. Sanders is familiar with the dynamic. He has been followed by cameras and commentary since his early teens. He has experience living with attention and still adhering to routine. Under heat, with a narrow set of snaps and multiple decision points, he stayed composed and effective. 2 speeding citations, 91 miles per hour in Brunswick and 101 miles per hour in Strongsville, became national items. General Manager Andrew Berry characterized the decisions as not smart and stressed that it's not only about driving fast, but about the safety of others. Sanders accepted responsibility, stated that he learned from the incidents, and said he would follow the rules. The attention to those citations did not alter his daily schedule or his practice preparation. He arrived early, stayed engaged, and kept the discussion centered on work. Away from the field, he spent time at Rainbow Terrace in Cleveland after a significant apartment fire, distributing supplies and checking on families affected by the incident. There was no formal media rollout around the visit. It was an instance of direct engagement with the community without publicity attached to it. That reflects the same approach he shows inside the building. Do the work first. Sanders treats each rep as if it might be his last for the day and his only chance to show a specific element on tape. He prepares for protections, cadence variations, route adjustments, and timing with a level of detail that compresses the learning curve. When he is not under center, he studies coverages from the sideline, charts plays, and reviews video before and after practice. He writes down the next day's calls so he can anticipate checks. He has reference using virtual simulation tools to replicate snaps he does not receive physically. That is not a passive stance, it is an active attempt to reduce the distance between classroom and field. He is building relationships across the roster, not just with projected starters. He communicates with defensive backs to understand what they see and how they react to certain stems. He spends time with offensive linemen to align on cadence and protection calls. He connects with newer players away from the facility so that communication improves in practice. That is practical leadership, consistent, low visibility work that becomes obvious when the ball is snapped and the operation is smooth. 3 days into camp, a central question remains. Why hasn't he taken a first-team rep? Flacco has seen work. Pickett has seen work. Dillon Gabriel has been cycled in. Sanders has remained behind all 3 on the depth chart while producing efficient periods when provided stable support. Head coach Kevin Stefanski has not publicly detailed the plan for distributing first-team snaps among the quarterbacks. When asked, Sanders answered that it is not his place to comment on rotation decisions. That response aligns with his day-to-day conduct, respectful, professional, and centered on the next assignment. The staff is managing a room with a Super Bowl MVP, a former first-round pick, multiple rookies, and a new set of combinations on the offensive line. That creates a set of decisions about exposure, pacing, and evaluation windows. Within that context, Sanders has presented a clear case for additional evaluation. He has shown he can execute the offense as designed when the variables are standard. Musgrave has a long-standing connection with the Sanders family through his time as a teammate of Deion Sanders in San Francisco. That familiarity supports direct communication. It does not guarantee anything about the depth chart, but it does help streamline teaching, feedback, and expectation setting. Inside the defensive back room, veterans such as Denzel Ward have provided perspective on timing, leverage, and eye discipline that Sanders has incorporated into his preparation. He is operating without the immediate family structure that defined his college environment. Away from his brother Shiloh and his father Deion, he is managing his own housing, nutrition, recovery schedule, and all the smaller tasks that accompany an NFL routine. Those adjustments matter because they influence consistency across a long camp. He has treated those responsibilities as part of the job rather than distractions, which is reflected in a steady daily approach. What he showed on day 3 with the second unit was not a surprise to those who have tracked his prior work. It was a continuation of a profile, efficient sequencing, clear timing, and consistent ball placement when protections and routes hold up. The 8-play period was short, but it was enough to reinforce the point. He doesn't need a large sample to demonstrate baseline operation. He needs a fair sample to test ceiling and adaptability. There is also the matter of perception. Public attention concentrated on the speeding tickets and the general manager's response. Less attention fell on the preparation, the efficient period with the second team, or the community engagement at Rainbow Terrace. That imbalance is common in training camp narratives. Sanders has handled it by keeping his answers simple and his focus on football. He has not tried to redirect the conversation. He has done his work and waited for additional reps. The objective next step is straightforward. Expand the evaluation with higher unit personnel and standard opponents. That does not require a complete reshuffling of the depth chart. It requires allocating a defined sequence of first-team snaps so that timing with starting receivers and protections with starting linemen can be measured on tape. The staff can then compare operation speed, accuracy under pressure, red zone decision-making, and 2-minute mechanics against the other quarterbacks. That is the most direct way to clarify the competition. None of this dismisses the experience or track records of the veterans in the room. It emphasizes that the purpose of camp is to test assumptions with current performance. Sanders has provided enough evidence with the second unit to justify a broader look. He has shown that the pace of his feet matches the pace of his eyes, that he can hold safeties with his shoulders, and that he can drive intermediate throws without float. He has also shown discipline to take the clean completion rather than force the vertical shot when leverage dictates otherwise. Every day, he has addressed the controllable items, meetings, note-taking, install recall, cadence management, and post-practice review. He has not asked for public guarantees. He has asked for an opportunity to compete on comparable terms. The 8-play sequence with the second unit was a small but clear example of what he can do when those terms exist. The staff's communications have been measured. Stefanski has not laid out a schedule for first-team rotations publicly. Barry addressed the speeding incidents directly and emphasized standards for decision-making off the field. Sanders accepted the criticism, adjusted his behavior, and moved forward. Those are the relevant facts. What remains is a football evaluation that can only be completed by giving him snaps with the top group and measuring the results. If that evaluation occurs and he performs at the level he showed with the second unit, the conversation will shift from potential to placement. If it does not occur, the question will persist through camp. Why not test the full picture? Sanders has built a case based on preparation, poise, and execution. He has demonstrated leadership by building relationships across the roster. He has shown maturity in handling external issues directly and moving on. He has given the staff reasons on the field and in the building to continue the process. 3 days into camp, he has answered everything within his control. He has shown growth, discipline, and consistent operation. He turned early fourth-team disarray into learning, then executed cleanly when moved to the second unit. He kept the discussion on football when outside topics threatened to dominate. He has not tried to win a press conference. He has tried to win every rep. If he continues to stack days like this, the next step is logical. Evaluate him with the starters, document the results, and let the tape determine the depth chart. Until then, he will continue to prepare, continue to compete, and continue to present the same message through his play.